and or single-handedly organized an initiative for Christmas that distributed 1,000 boxes of candy to police, to nursing homes in Norman and Oklahoma City, the COVID unit at Integris. He truly cares about our community and is just so much fun to work with. So I'm glad you called me your friend, because I feel that way about you, Muhammad. So hopefully we'll grow from this initiative. We did one back in December that was very informative, and I hope that you'll go back and review the programs that the Dialogue Institute is putting forward. And one thing that excites me about today's program in working with these people, not only Muhammad, who has such a generous heart, but also Shalynne and Cinthya. Oh my goodness. We call them like their first week on the job. I don't even think Shay had her official email address, and I apologize, I keep getting your personal. But anyway, it was their first week, and they responded so graciously with a yes, we will help you out. So I just am tickled to death to be the moderator for this program. The Women's Diversity Initiative, we do connection, collaboration, and conversation, private peer groups of 8 to 10, the professional services, not placement, but connecting with PR firms and that kind of thing, and conversation, which is individual consulting. So that's, if you're interested in having an invitation, go to my Facebook page, and that's enough about me. I want to know more about these women who are leading this incredible initiative. And I think we need a little background. So I'm going to start with some historical context. Shalynne, let's start with you. Are these positions, a lot of people want to know, are they newly created? Did they come out of another program? Give us a little history here.
So do you mean the position specifically for the city of Oklahoma City, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. So for the city of Oklahoma City, this has been a desire for the mayor for the past couple of years, been talking to our city manager about this position, and just really wanting to make sure that they get it right. So my understanding from many people within the organization is this is something that has been discussed for at least the last 2 years.
I see. Now, how does it fit in the structure? I know the mayor has done a lot to lead us in the areas of diversity. Mm-hmm. How does, you don't report to the mayor, right?
No,
okay.
No, ma'am. So I report directly to City Manager Craig Freeman. I am not in HR. I sit in the city manager's office. I don't know, Cinthya, if you have a similar structure.
Yeah, so very similar to where I also report to the city manager and am part of the city management team. So not under any one department, but really overseeing the overall just system.
And Cinthya, tell us how this position developed in Norman.
Yeah, so, you know, it really takes the leadership of the mayor, the council, you know, and our management team. And so, you know, for some time, I think those leadership, you know, groups had this in mind, but it really spurred, I think, you know, council really got behind it in the past year to just activate. And I think that's important because that's really what our role is about really putting into action a lot of the just energy and the opportunities that we can bring from pulling, you know, our collective sources. So that activation really took off over the past year. And I'm so grateful that we do have those strong leaders to count on for support, because as you'll hear through our discussion, this is not a role, and I feel comfortable that, you know, I think Shalynne and I share this just way of thinking about the role, that it's not about one person alone, but it's about the collective team and the community. And so we have to count on support. We have to count on those leaders and all of our citizens of the community too. So, so yes, that's the background of the role here in Norman. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. You really are. I know, and I appreciate when we were first talking about this, your sense of humility in inviting public commentary and support. And I think that's incredible. The truth is, you both are trailblazers. You're carving out a whole new territory. So we welcome you. We welcome you. I want to get better acquainted. And I know you have some incredible, Cinthya, with AT&T, Shalynne with Walmart and One Oak, and some very respected diversity initiatives. So I want to hear, let's start with you, Cinthya, this time. Give me a couple of your highlights with your career that are relevant to the new position that you're holding.
Yeah, so, oh goodness, you know, I'm so blessed to think back on a career that really, you can see the building blocks just start to come together. But I think it goes way, before that, right? And I think we'll get to it in our conversation. What we do, you know, as we're growing up, at the experiences we have, all of those things just really come together to build us into who we are today. But specifically, my time at AT&T was so special to me because it was through the, just being tapped by one of our leaders to say, can you help us to expand our employee resource groups? And so that was around the 2008 timeframe where for AT&T, there had already been activity around diversity and inclusion and employee resource groups, but it wasn't so public as it is and so just common as it is now. But, it was exciting to take on that role and help to grow specifically our Hispanic focused employee resource groups. And so, we started off with about 900 or so members at the time that I took that task on. Within 2 years, we were at 2,400 members. Wow. And by the time I left the role, which my last role was national president of the organization, we had 11,000 members. And so, that level of growth and commitment, I remember, strategizing on where our employee base, our bases were across the country. And, and some of those that were a few hours away, driving down and spending the day with those employees and just really sharing on what engagement and what diversity inclusion could mean to them. Cities, like Dallas, but also cities like Joplin, Missouri, and being able to show that no matter what the community looks like, there is opportunity for diversity and inclusion. And so, overall highlights of my time there and how they connect to this role is that I was able to really grow and mature in the thinking of diversity and inclusion, to connect the people element, which is the heart of what we do, and really look at it through the lens of how does it impact the business? How does it impact professional development and recruitment and pipelines, communities, and that external engagement piece? How can we turn just one opportunity, into 5? And so one of my previous bosses, she's like, I know that, by working together, we can make 1 and 1 equal 3, and so I believe in that. And so this is what putting, intentional, precise diversity and inclusion practices do for an organization, and in our case, for a city as a whole.
Your passion and your dedication and your heart really comes through when I hear you speak, Cinthya. Thank you for sharing. Shay, you also have a very impressive background, and I know with so much that you've done, it's kind of hard to narrow these down for these two women. But can you give us some highlights that are relevant to what you're doing now?
Absolutely. So One Oak, I will always be so grateful for the work I was able to do at One Oak. Not sure if everyone is familiar, but One Oak is a Fortune 500 natural gas company headquartered in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And to get my start in D&I at a company like that, especially, you know, let's just say it's, you know, we all know how the Midwest is. So to just jump right into that type of work at One Oak was a blessing for me. Had the opportunity to start the initiative from the ground up under the leadership of Justice Wadener Smith. A lot of you may know Justice. Yes. So that's a big highlight for me because one, I have had the opportunity to start a program. What I will say is I didn't even know this type of work existed when I got to One Oak. She started in August. I started in October. I met her maybe week 2. I didn't know at the time that you shouldn't just ask someone, hey, I'm Shay, could you mentor me? Because of her title, I just knew that I wanted to be a part of whatever work it was that she was doing. But it really shaped where I am today because I was able to then transition onto the team. Highlights from my time at One Oak was anything from I enjoyed working with our D&I council, which was CEO led. So really working with executives because if they're not bought in at the top, the initiative won't really go too far. And so I can truly say that the executives at One Oak were definitely bought in. So spending a lot of time with them, as well as the BRGs, the business resource groups, helping those expand. They had one at the time, it was an affinity group, but we were like, okay, we have to give this opportunity to other marginalized groups. So going through that expansion was great. And then I'll say that at Dollar General and Walmart, having the opportunity to be a part of a company's that size, the resources are like just endless because a lot of people, obviously, if you can get Walmart or Dollar General to be one of your customers or, you know, a vendor of them. And so being exposed to different things. The last thing that I'll say is at One Oak, I was exposed to TARA, the Tulsa Area Human Resource Association. And I've been involved with the Return on Inclusion Summit ever since my time with them in 2014. And this year I have the opportunity to chair the summit and it starts tomorrow, but I do want to put in a plug for only $40 or $25 for government or nonprofits. It's an opportunity to attend Oklahoma's largest conference, D&I conference. And I put that plug in just because we have to continue these conversations and opportunities like this. You know, for Oklahoma to be doing this work is a really big deal. So yeah, that's those are the highlights from just the opportunities that I was able to be afforded with those companies. I will never, ever take for granted.
Shay, how would they, 2 follow-up questions, how would they access the consortium for tomorrow?
Okay. I'll drop the link in there for y'all. Yeah.
Okay. And for those who may not be familiar with the business groups, just 1 or 2 sentences about what those are and the business, go ahead.
Yeah. So business resource groups are employee resource groups. So they're groups for marginalized individuals. It's like what Cinthya was saying. You have, you know, your Latinx groups, you have your Black African-American groups, you have your, some companies have interfaith groups. I know my time at Walmart, we had an interfaith group. And so it's groups for marginalized individuals to help the company move the needle for their identities. That said, the best model is to make sure that you have allies at the table and not make them exclusionary. So they may be targeted towards those identities, but allies are valuable in those conversations. And I know we'll talk about allies in a second.
Okay. Well, and you know, you're leading me into the next piece because I know Justice. Mm-hmm. I love that strong women influence and mentor and support other strong women. And Justice did, when I was founder of OK Ethics, she did a diversity, she moderated it. She was fantastic. So you had a great mentor there. And that leads me into the next aspect. And I want to know more about the 2 of you and growing up and who or what was most influential in your formative years? And I'm going to pivot back to Cinthya, and we'll go back and forth and give Shay a little break here. But Cinthya, let's talk about that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, so I grew up in South Oklahoma City. I came from Chihuahua, Mexico at the age of 7. And any South Oklahoma City people on the call, it's always just so special to think back to where you grew up. There you go, Jessica. And so, it was such a special time because looking back today, I can see where, again, as I mentioned earlier, the pieces really come together in those foundational elements of leadership. And so growing up, I was, highly engaged as a student through the Latino Community Development Agency and their youth outreach programs, Young Life, and their student ministry programs. And so it was really those two pieces that just really poured into me and have created this sense of giving back, right? And so throughout school, high school, throughout college, I always sought to connect back to community because I knew how important those two organizations were to me growing up in a home, with a single mom. It was, you had to look for opportunities for resources. And so again, I grew up and continued with my service and giving. And it was so exciting that when I transitioned from, college and really moved into professional world and focus, that I was able to identify the avenue for service through employee resource groups. And so going back to that, tap on the shoulder of, hey, will you help us lead our employee resource groups at AT&T? Really, it ended up being one of those that, started filling my buckets too. And so if I could help to show others how, being engaged helps you to transform your career perspective, your professional development thought from, just an 8 to 5 and shut it down into being and becoming the brand and really believing in the brand through your engagement, then it was just, a wonderful win-win. And so, that's a long answer to, growing up South Oklahoma City, those two organizations. And I'm really excited to share that even today, I'm still involved with both of those. And again, it's all about just continuing that cycle of service and giving.
Thank you for sharing those personal lessons that you've learned and the people who influenced. I'm going to take it back to Shay, and let's hear your story. Who was influential? Tell us about where you're in Bentonville now, right?
I am in Bentonville. We'll be transitioning after I have my baby. So a lot's going on right now, but who am I? So I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, raised by a single mom, along with my maternal grandparents. My father was incarcerated most of my childhood, and then he was a victim. He was murdered. I'm a first generation college student. I was diagnosed with alopecia at the age of 6. I'm a wife, a mom, and a woman of faith. I like to say all of those things because that's the aspects that make me me. And I know that everyone else's dimension of diversity is important to them. And that is exactly why I do the work. When you say who influenced me, every single person I just named, right? So in my formative years, my mom and my grandparents, to see, how they always taught us just love. And they truly meant it. Just love, love, love. It's about love. Really, my mom exposing me to different opportunities that she would even say to this day, I didn't know what I was doing, but when an opportunity came, she allowed it to happen. And I know I kind of get into one of the other questions, but I'll just say, even at a young age, for example, I had a friend who was Chinese, and she said, do you want to go to church with me? And I asked my mom, and she was like, you won't understand anything they're saying, but go for it. there was always opportunities as long as she trusted the parents or trusted the environment. She just exposed me to different things. And so my grandparents being there and, you know, being raised during the era of segregation and everything, to see how they were just so much about love and never taught us hate, never taught us, you know, to be against anyone. It was everyone is welcome. So they definitely played a part. And then even my incarcerated dad, knowing that with him growing up, that's why undergrad, I have a degree in criminology, because I wanted to know, how does the criminal mind work, to be honest with you. And because I knew that he was a product of his environment. And so we're all a product of our environment, and we just need to be exposed to different things to learn a new way of life, learn a new way of thought, as long as we're open to it. So I just think about those aspects. And like I said, alopecia, wife, mom, all of those things play a part, because alopecia, I know what it's like to cover. Most of my life I wore wigs. I know that I felt that society expected me to show up a certain way. Society expected me to have a head full of hair, and that was my worth. It was really hard for me as a young adult to decide I'm done with wigs. But when I did, and the way that the world accepted me, I was like, I was my biggest barrier. But you couldn't have told me that growing up. And so I could keep going on and on. Wife and mom, I mean, being a mom of soon to be two, definitely influential in my life, because I want the world to be ready for my children. I want the world to be a place where my kids, no matter what they put their mind to, they know that they can do it, and they are their own barriers, not someone else or the system, systemic racism, systemic just exclusion that we are trying to combat today. So like Cinthya said, I know that was long, but when you say, who am I and what makes me who I am, my faith, all of that is why I do this work, and why 5 o'clock, I don't clock out. I never get to clock out, because that hat is always on.
Mm-hmm. I want to follow up with you, because we were kind of leading into the next piece, which of course this whole series is part of it, is resiliency. And I think you touched on some of this, Shay. So where do you, I mean diversity, sharing these new, maybe not new to everybody, but certainly trailblazing is probably the best way to put it. It can be exhausting. It can try your patience. And I know you're coming from a space of a good heart and loving and teaching, yet it is hard emotional work. So let me ask you, where do you find your strength to do this, to not get exhausted?
Yeah. So one, you have to have your circle. You have to have your tribe, your people that you can call and be like, what just happened? Why did that just happen? But you know, and I know that everyone on this call will understand, it's about grace too. So a lot of times when people would get flustered and upset with where people are, it really is, the longer you do this work, you realize that like, if you extend grace, you don't get as tired, because it's like, either you see this as an opportunity to, I'm just going to forge a relationship and take it one conversation or one step at a time. Or you also learn to pick and choose your battles. That's one of the things I learned very early on, was that not every sword is one that I'm willing to fall on. And that doesn't mean I'm not willing to still be an ally, but there's some people that just don't want to move. And if you exert all your energy there, so there's a continuum, there's the movable middle, the early adopters, they're ready to go. And then the people that they don't plan on getting on board anyways. And if you spend too much time there, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. And I don't want to count those people out, because some of them still continue, like hop on board. But a lot of my energy goes to the movable middle, to the people that, even if we don't agree, because I love being in conversation with people that don't agree with me. Even if we don't agree, we can respect. As long as there's respect there, I really can keep going. I really have. In the beginning, it was not that easy. I would get easily flustered. I'd be like, let's just sing Kumbaya and everybody love each other now. But I quickly had to learn, you will get tired. So hopefully that's your answer. It's about grace and patience, and realizing that everybody is in a different place. And when you can get that, like really, really download that into your spirit, it's hard to get shaken by it.
Very good. being from a mother who is Scotch Irish, I understand. Give me patience now. So, there's some urgency here. Cynthia, let's pivot to you and let's hear how do you keep going and stay resilient? And you know, obviously you have a passion and a dedication, but let's hear more about that.
So, you know, I think it's about, you know, just the fact of, well, one is being realistic, you know, to the work and just really being upfront with yourself on understanding that it is hard work because it's the work of people. And so this isn't one where you can just, you know, turn a switch and everyone's on board. And so it takes time and it takes patience, as you just mentioned and Shay mentioned. But more than anything, it takes consistency. And so I think that, you know, by just being level on those critical pieces and understanding the reality of the work ahead, you know, that really does, for me, helps to create a path of you know, minimizing and mitigating, I guess, surprises or, you know, just own personal blowups and wanting it now. But something that really moves me is the fact that I've seen it work, you know, and so throughout my time at AT&T, as I mentioned, you know, that's a Fortune 9 company. And so the organization that I led and the, you know, the company itself and being an ambassador for this global company, like I saw the transformation of, you know, initially having, you know, again, just even the 900 members for my own employee or resource group. There were 11 other groups. And then seeing it grow and seeing us, you know, just reach these milestones. Eventually, can't remember the year, but we had 100,000 employees signed up for at least one employee resource group. And so, you know, this really is work that delivers results, that makes a difference on people's lives, on families, on generations. So I've seen the results happen. And so I have to stay motivated because, you know, I know that by staying focused, staying consistent, and really, you know, as Shay mentioned as well, rounding the people around you that will support and will be able to help, you know, advance the message. This is work that matters. And I'm so proud of the city of Norman and of my own city, the city of Oklahoma City, where I grew up, that I can be here with Shay today and that we can say, you know, we are spearheading the work that will transform, you know, our cities and our state. And so, you know, this is powerful. And really, I'm just so excited to the fact that, you know, we're a month in. And so, you know, the best is here to come. And, you know, we'll be able to come back, you know, hopefully next year and tell you of all the great things that took place over the year. And so it's just a really exciting thing when you can just, you know, trust the fact that there are going to be fantastic results.
I love that because you not only highlighted your great experience and the results, but there is, both of you, I think, have recognized the systemic benefits of diversity. It's not just whether you're doing it at a company, but it impacts your family and for generations to come. You're creating a legacy. So I very much appreciate that. You didn't mention that you're both OU grads, and so you have that in common. And I know we have some people from OU tuning in, so I'll be sure and mention that. You know, I think we want to acknowledge that there is a lot of healing that needs to take place, and to borrow Mayor Holt's term, to create that unity in the community. And so I'd like for you both to think for a minute, and I'll shift back to Shay to answer this. What do you think is going to be your number one challenge in the next year or so?
That I don't even have to think much about. It's buy-in.
Okay.
And I will say that typically when you're starting, you, like I said earlier, you have to start with the very top. I don't have to worry about that. Leadership is on board, hands down. Even our department heads are what we call them. But obviously when you get to that middle leadership and a little bit, I don't like to say lower because we're all on this journey together, but when you think about levels within the organization, it's just that lack of understanding or awareness of what D&I really is. A lot of times D&I is seen as divisive, and it's seen as we're pinning one group against another, or really it can feel like we're pinning all marginalized groups against the white male. If I'm just being completely transparent, that's not what this is. And so it's important to me to spend my time saying we're all in this together, and really understanding that just because you may see a white male does not mean that they're not a part of a marginalized group. That doesn't mean that at all. We don't know their faith. We don't know their sexual orientation. We don't know if they have a diverse ability. So to assume that this is us versus them, or this polarized, and the world is polarized right now. You turn on the TV and it's us versus them. And so it's that polarization. It's that this isn't for me, so therefore, I am not for it. I'm going to be really loud, and I'm going to make sure that everyone knows I'm not for it, to try to be a distractor. But to my point earlier, I don't give much energy there, but I am more than willing to have conversations with people that, again, are willing to listen, and where we can hear each other out versus just it's us versus them. I'm polarized. I don't plan on moving the needle on this one. And again, just showing grace. And so this year is all about just listening and communicating what is diversity and inclusion. When the city of Oklahoma City says that we are an inclusive organization, what does that mean? And what does that mean to every individual alike, if that makes sense?
Great. Seeking some common ground. And I think you hit a really important point about the false dichotomies. Just because you're lifting a group up doesn't mean that you're slamming another group down
at all.
So it requires that collaboration, cooperation. Excellent. Cinthya, let's pivot back to you to talk about what you think is going to be the big challenge.
I think the challenge I see is, just the fact that we all just have 24 hours in a day, right? And wear multiple hats. So I think it goes to time, and because there's so much to do. I mean, I'm sure that the list is just growing for Shay, as it is for me, on the various opportunities and the various ways that we can, want to activate. And so it really does just take, just an effort to, again, bring in community, bring in collaboration, do it together so that we can maximize. So, we can make the 1 and 1 equal 3. And so, that is really it. It's how do we maximize our resources, including time, to ensure that we, just really make a move on the various things that are so necessary. Because to the people that are experiencing the need, their priority, right? And so their top priority. So how do we just balance and maximize to extend our reach and efforts across all of the different areas?
And Shalynne, I want to, Cinthya says something that's very important too, to especially this first year, is getting people to understand that D&I isn't this extra thing we're asking you to do. So once we can communicate that this is about integrating it into your everyday behaviors and everyday interactions, and getting people to really understand that this is just about, being intentional with all of our decisions. I do think that is I know that's going to be really important in year one. So people aren't like, well, where am I supposed to fit this into my schedule? It's about, we're already mentoring people. Let's be intentional about making sure we're mentoring different types of people, not just people like ourselves. We're already going to be doing succession planning or performance management. Let's be really intentional about how we make sure that we're talking about everyone on our team versus, someone like myself. The list goes on. We're already going to be looking for suppliers. Let's just talk about how we can be really intentional about making sure that diverse suppliers have an opportunity. So I just wanted to say, Cinthya is so right that time, people feel like, are you going to add more time to my day for this, for me to do this? When it's just about teaching you how to shift your behaviors to be more inclusive in the everyday things that you are already doing.
We don't have a lot of time left. This is so important. I know we want to get into, because of the limited time and resources, and I like what you're saying, Shay, that you make it part of who you are. Integrity is the whole person, right? It's from integer, the whole number, the whole person. And so this all makes such great sense. I want to talk about a couple of action items, because you mentioned earlier getting the community involved. And so what are a couple of things that regular citizens can do to help you in your new role? Cinthya?
Yeah, well, thank you for that, because that's always an open invitation for engagement, right? And so just like you have the community and our audience here today, we all have such an opportunity. One of the things about, even if we just think about social media, the power of, just the exponential reach that we can all have. And so, and that can be, productive or not. So I would encourage everyone to become educated on a certain topic. You don't have to be an expert PhD, just become knowledgeable, right? And so, for instance, with Black History Month, being here in the month of February, there's so many resources out there on just a piece of the, the knowledge that you can share, and share it, learn something new, and encourage others, and tell the story of your learning and the evolution, because no one, not even the PhDs, got there, the next day. It took work, and it took engagement, and it took, just effort. And so I would encourage everyone to just really put themselves in opportunities for learning, and then share what that experience was like and your outcome, right? So encourage others through your own journey. I'm so proud of the City of Norman and our team. If you go to the City of Norman's website, you'll see a banner that is Black History Month. It's not hidden. It's not something that you've got to figure out where to get to it. It's just visible, and in it there provides lots of various events, resources, educational links, etc. Through a partnership with our Pioneer Library System, our Norman Public Schools, the University of Oklahoma, we were able to really bring together this collaborative site to encourage learning and dialogue. So I would just encourage everyone to position themselves in a place of expanding your own knowledge and then sharing that experience.
Cinthya, I appreciate the resources, and we may want to put those access to in the chat box. And I know looking through some of the questions, Dora, for example, asked, I think it was Dora, I'm seeing these scroll by here, but how do you start those difficult conversations? And I think you have to come from a place of taking the initiative to do your own research, reading books like, in my case, White Fragility and How to Be Anti-Racist, and some other books, and doing that first before you start having the conversations. Shay, what about you? What are some action items that you think citizens could help with?
Yeah, so I agree with Cinthya. Educate yourself, listen, a lot of listening, especially when it comes to allyship. And I know we may be short on time and may not be able to get there, but to be a good ally, you need to listen to the group that you're trying to be an ally for. Especially when it comes to educating yourself, look for opportunities where you will be uncomfortable, not so uncomfortable that you won't learn. But if we continue to go to, the same conferences or interactions or whatever that we're used to, and we're expanding our knowledge on one thing, which is great, but also how am I learning about different religions? How am I learning about, different ethnicities? How am I learning about different groups so I can be a better ally and better understand where people are coming from? Not necessarily agree. That's what people have to understand. We don't have to agree alike to love alike. And in order to love each other, we have to know, like, how do you meet a person if you're not willing to go where they are, right? And so I would also say, offer your privilege. A lot of times we talk about white privilege, and white privilege is real. And I know that as a Christian, I have privilege. So when can you offer your privilege to other groups to make sure that they too have a seat at the table and a voice? The other thing I'll say is educate your children. So we talked about my mom. She's like, go, you're not going to know anything they're talking about, but go. Give them those opportunities because children are like sponges. And that's really where our change is going to happen. I look at my daughter and her, just how she's 3 and just how she's open to anyone, anything. I'm not a believer that she doesn't see color. She does see color, but it doesn't matter. She's like, we're all friends, right? I just want to go play with my friends. So take your kids along on this journey so we can, one, change our future, and just do it with your family, do it with your circle of influence. That would be my last thing is we all have a circle of influence. Don't try to reach too far. Don't try to overextend yourself. What is your circle of influence? Take that group along with you, and we will all impact change.
And I love what you're saying. And I think those first steps are always the most difficult to reach out. Do you have any suggestions? And we've got about, Mohammed just reminded me, I probably have about 20 minutes, so I don't want to rush you. How do you take those first steps? Any recommendations for reaching out? I know the Women's Interfaith group that I've been running for 10 years, it's so fascinating to me because we all have such common understanding of terms like hope and compassion. So how do you make that first step? Cinthya, I'll pivot back to you this time.
Yeah, thank you. So earlier in this conversation and in others that we've shared that, these type of conversations and these type of initiatives require that leadership support. And so again, you're here, and if you're the leader of your organization, then great, let's keep having these conversations and take them to your teams. But if for some reason you're not, don't let that, hinder the opportunity to move these conversations forward. I am so sure that if you reach out to your leader and tell them about this talk, if you tell them about your interest to advance the conversation within the business, that in itself is a great start, because you'll probably start a conversation with your leader that they probably haven't had in a while or before ever. And so it just takes the opportunity to open up an invitation to, I've had this on my mind, and I happen to be at this talk, and I really think we can do something around it. And if they just really help to buy in some support, I mean, it'd be amazing if maybe you can schedule in these days a virtual lunch with your boss on, where did you grow up? And I bet you that even that question in itself would help to open up a lot of discussion around, wow, I didn't realize that, whatever. And so it's building, just understanding and bridges to that human connection that sometimes when we are just focused on, whatever that 8 to 5 task is for us, we don't have the opportunity to really get human with each other, right? And so I would encourage you to just reach out to your leadership team and just say, hey, I think it'd be really interesting and if we could have this. And so just make it a simple question. You don't even have to deep dive into the difficult stuff, but take baby steps into helping people become comfortable with being open.
No, Cinthya, what I like about that is reaching out on a human level. I mean, how do you make friends? You get to know each other. You are curious about what influence, like we just did. Where, tell me about yourself, that kind of thing. That's how you make friends. And it's not just reaching out to the leadership, but also your peers and your coworkers. So I love the humanity of what you just said. Shalynne, would you like to build on that?
Yeah, so I was going to talk about food too. Everyone loves food, right? And so lunch is a really good start, but so there's levels. To Cynthia's point, if you're not comfortable leading, so for example, One Oak did something that was really neat. And my understanding is that the city of Oklahoma City recently did something very similar before I came on board. But One Oak, they were well into their BRGs, so resource groups. If you have them, leveraging them for these types of conversations are great. Their Black African American resource group did something called learning tables, where people were simply able to say, I want to go to lunch with people. I will pay for my own lunch. I want to talk about this topic. They randomized the groups. They called restaurants. This was before COVID. We called restaurants downtown Tulsa, so they were ready for them. They went, they read articles or watched different TED Talks before they all got there, and they talked about a topic. For them, it was specific to the Black African American community, because that's what resource group put it on. If you have a women's group and you want to talk about women's issues, you can do that. Or you can just talk about, what's happening in the world today. Whatever the case is, being able to make it real for people and for people to raise their hand and say, I'll pay for myself. You will be blown away with how many people want to come and be a part of this conversation. People love food. It's something about pulling people together for food. There were people that never would have came to an auditorium. We never saw in the auditorium for big speakers. There were VPs that were showing up for these lunches. It's something about, that concept of breaking bread together. And so along those lines, if you don't have a resource group, how do you leverage HR? If you don't want to send out the invite, how do you give this idea to HR? Can we just do these random lunches where we just talk about different things? And it could be related to the workplace. It can be related to what's the difference between mentorship and sponsorship. A lot of people don't know what that is. That's another thing. A lot of people think that D&I is specifically always about identities, when it's really also about educating people on those unspoken rules or understandings in the workplace that if you don't know or understand how it works, you can't advance. Let's talk about that. Can we talk about time management? Can we talk about whatever that is? So that now I can break barriers that I wasn't able to break because no one was talking to me about it before. So you can leverage HR to say, HR, can I help you kind of on the back end, coordinate something like this? Or you can be the one to send the article out. Hey, everybody, I'm learning about mentorship and sponsorship. Does anyone want to go to lunch to talk about this? The last thing I'll say is a lot of times we think that it's on mentors to be the one to come to us. If we want to change the cycle, invite a leader to lunch. I want to get to know more about what you do. When you put yourself out there for people, they typically will come to you. It's just not going to happen naturally. So how are you being courageous and brave and saying, I know that I want to move along. I want to move the needle in this company. I want to see myself at the top. I'm about to put myself on this VP's calendar. A lot of times VPs will do that, but they can't be the one to initiate it because it seems like favoritism. So I know that was loaded, but I'm all about being brave and courageous and just saying, I'm going to put myself out there. Who wants to go eat with me? Or who wants to have a conversation, a Zoom conversation, and trying to build those relationships.
These are so down to earth and practical. Mm-hmm. And I think it's something that all of us would feel comfortable for doing. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I'll keep going. We've kicked around a lot of terms that, to those who may not be familiar with DEI, well, we can define what that is, starting there, but let's go through some of the terminology, starting with that. And what does that mean, DEI? What does that mean, Cinthya, to you? What is it? Can you define it?
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting too, because I think it's important that going back to the level set, that we understand, what the goals are, right? When we say DEI. And so the different pillars, if you will, So with diversity, we want to bring in different thought leadership. That's my goal when I think of diversity, right? And that would encompass race, that would encompass gender, that would encompass sexual orientation, that would encompass our, rural or urban. And so all of these different experiences that allow us to have different thought leadership and allow us to make decisions on a more foundational or level basis are so important. The inclusion part, I think, is exactly to what Shay was just talking about in regards to, having opportunity to understand what it takes to grow in your career or what it takes at that particular company and that, culture at the company. So inclusion is making sure that anyone has the same ability or understanding of how to advance within a system, whether that's education or a professional, et cetera. The equity piece is so important because, we can put the same service out and think, well, we've done it. We've, mastered the piece of providing the service. But if the equity piece of filling the gap to allow for the individual to attain that service is not there, then that's a lost opportunity. And a really quick and easy example of this is just last week, I heard this news article of Walgreens is going to deliver vaccinations. And so great, now there's going to be neighborhood locations that have access. Wonderful. Well, it didn't stop there. They said that they also partnered with Uber to make sure that those with transportation needs were able to get to their local store. And so I thought that is a fantastic example of equity in action, of understanding that there are underserved populations that whether you put, this service, in their neighborhood, they might still not be able to get there. And so that's the equity piece in a real life example.
Great. That's a great example. Shay, I want to follow up with you on this in terms of equity and equality, differentiating, maybe elaborate a little bit more on what Cinthya was saying.
Yeah, so I like to say diversity is a noun, it's a fact, it's difference. Where two or more are there, it's a difference. If there's another Black woman in the room with me, we're still different, we're diverse. Inclusion is a verb, it's what you do. Those are the behaviors. That's where just because we have the fact there, we have diversity there, if you're not inclusive, your organization will be a revolving door because people don't have that sense of belonging. And so to be inclusive, you then also want to be equitable. And the difference between equity and equality is equality means everyone gets the same thing. And that's not what I need is not what Cinthya needs. What Cinthya needs is not what you need. So equity is about figuring out what people need for them personally as an individual to succeed. And then giving them that, but not, people have this concept around D&I as a handout. It's about making sure we're removing barriers so people have what they need to succeed and then allowing them to do what it is that they need to do so. So hopefully that was pretty straightforward. Equality is about being equal. Equity is about giving people exactly what it is that they need to succeed.
Great, great. And Shalynne, I'm going to follow up because we also kicked around the term ally. And you said we'll be talking about that in a minute. And so we hear a lot of what is an ally? What defines an ally for you?
Ooh, it's pretty loaded, right? But to me, an ally is someone who is of a dominant group that can offer their privilege and is willing to offer their privilege and to be a continuous learner for another group. And so I know that privilege is often a loaded term, but just really able to, like I said, say there's a seat at the table. I want to make one for you. If it's not, I want to invite you here and I want to make sure that you're heard. And I have the ability to do that because of my privilege or because of, my identity versus your identity in whatever aspect. So even being able-bodied. I know that I have privilege. And so how am I making sure that those that have diverse abilities are being heard in a way, or if I'm, even being intentional now, when I used the restroom stall, I would go to the larger stalls, not really realizing how rude and inconsiderate I was being. For me, it was just more room. And so how am I educating people or making just those slight differences or slight changing my behavior to make sure that I'm creating inclusive spaces for people? And so what I'll end with allyship is, a lot of people think that all allies are on the front line with the megaphone and they're the loudest. It is what you feel comfortable doing, whether it's changing your behaviors and not using that big stall anymore because you really don't need to and you don't know who may need to, or whether it's being the one to take up a cause and appropriately speaking up for someone else. Allyship looks different for everyone. And I'm really big on allyship. If it feels overwhelming, you're working in a space that isn't really for you, and you probably need to ease yourself into that.
That has really helped me expand my perspective, and basically it's really just helping others. And Cinthya, what is your take on allyship?
Yeah, so I think, allyship, one of the questions that we shared earlier was, how do you get started, or, and so I think it's about, those that are able to provide a safe space for others, right? So when we think about the diversity piece, there's so many facets to who holds power when, right? So I think if we all just kind of agree that we each have equal power in being able to learn and advocate, because it could be that, there's just so many ways of looking at diversity. But for instance, I had a chat yesterday, and so I was at this location, and I noticed the room, and it was so diverse, and it was wonderful. And so the person I was meeting with, I said, like, this is what all of our places need to look like. And so he turned around and looked, and he said, wow, like, yeah. And so it's being able to just help to kind of inspire just thought and support. And so, it could be being in the trenches, or it could be, as Shay said, just really being able to provide the support to create a safe space. And so we even see that, in stickers that, are focused to allies in the LGBTQ community, safe space, understanding, etc. But it goes so far beyond that. If we can just really create and be a brand for ourselves of people that respect and that are interested in the humanities side of learning each other's worlds, then I think that's being just an ally every day.
Great definition. I'm going to move into another one. I'll shift it back to Shay. And I saved one of the hard ones toward the end here, and that is unpacking what does privilege mean? Because there is some emotional wallop with that if you mention it. So I'll let you unpack this, Shay.
Yeah, I've talked about it a little bit, but what I would like to say is, a lot of times privilege is tied to shame, because people feel like, and sometimes it is used out of context, and people do kind of beat others upside the head with privilege. I'm not trying to take that away. But for the most part, people often hear privilege and the world says you are where you are only because of how you look and you don't deserve it. That's not always the case. And that's for anybody. Like, sometimes we just end up with things that we do or do not deserve. I don't know, but it's not my place to say if you do or don't deserve it. What matters is we're privileged sometimes because of our identity. We can end up with resources or advantages that other people don't have. What's important is what you do with that. So I am personally not saying turn down those opportunities. What I'm saying is, once you make it there, no matter how you made it, keep that door open for some other folks, right? And being really intentional about who you bring along on the journey with you. And so letting go of that shame. A lot of times, like I said, put shame or guilt. And it's not about being shamed or guilt or any of that. It's about, now that I have this privilege, how am I going to be a good steward of it? How am I going to be intentional about how I pull people up with me and move along the spectrum? So hopefully that was helpful, because I've talked about it a lot, but that's what I would probably want to add to what I talked about in terms of, I don't want anyone to feel ashamed that they may or may not have privilege. As you can tell, I talk about mine because it's fact. I know that being able-bodied, I'm privileged. I know that being a Christian in Oklahoma specifically, I'm privileged. That's okay. That's not a bad thing. But what am I doing to make sure that other people feel that they can also, that I can hold space for them when we're together, and open doors for them as well. And understanding that by opening doors and letting them in, that doesn't mean that either of us have to change if we both should be there. And there's a lot of people that should be somewhere else, but they're disadvantaged because of their identity, if that was helpful.
Yes, I like to, you touched on it, but being self-aware of privileges that we all enjoy. And so in some respect or another. Cinthya?
Thank you. And so, you know, in regards to that, I had to look up to make sure I had the right title. So I'm putting in the chat another resource for you.
Great.
And so, you know, in 2016, our chairman, well, our then chairman and CEO of AT&T, Randall Stevenson, had a talk where, you know, I was so honored to be in the room. So annually we have employee resource group conference, and so that's when all of our employees can come together for this event from across the country, the world. And it started with about 700 employees coming together annually. And you know, at my last event where I was in attendance, there were about 2,000, more than 2,000. So this is a powerful event. And so I have to share that context of 2,000 people in this ballroom, because when he made this speech, you could literally hear a pin drop because it was so powerful. And so here is this chairman of a global company talking about his own reality to understanding and the blinds being removed on privilege, where he had a conversation with a dear friend of his who happens to be a Black man, who happens to be a cardiac surgeon, I believe. And so, you know, when you think of power and position, this friend of his had reached, you know, a pinnacle of having wonderful, you know, just affluent type of life and so forth, family, great. But he opened the eyes of Mr. Stevenson through a story of how even at that level of success, he still didn't feel safe and comfortable in any space. And so I would encourage you to look up this speech. Just, you know, go to 2016 Randall Stevenson, Tolerance is for Cowards speech on YouTube. And it's amazing. And just being in that room was a transformative thing. Hearing this leader really give us a call to action on, you know, really what are we doing to step out of tolerance and move into action is so powerful. So it happens and it's real. And, you know, I think the more that we can become open to understanding, then the easier it is for us to discuss privilege and work towards that impact.
Right. I so appreciate all the resources that you are sharing. This is going to be so helpful to people. I'm in the next 4 or 5 minutes before I turn it back to Muhammad. Let me ask you this. We'll shift back to Shalynne. What causes you to be hopeful for the future?
I will tell you one, it is my faith. Just in terms of just being optimistic, knowing that, you know, better days can definitely come as long as we, I don't know, just come together. One really quick story that I like to tell, just because I know that a lot of people on this call are people of faith, is there was an individual in one of the organizations I work for that said, I don't want anything to do with D&I because you all are trying to change my beliefs. And it was that individual's openness to being willing to sit in a room and to just talk it out, to say, why do you feel that way? This individual ended up being one of our biggest supporters, because it was after that conversation that he understood this isn't about changing beliefs. This isn't about doing anything but doing heart work, and understanding that at the end of the day, we all deserve to come to work and be psychologically safe. And when you can be grounded in that and understand that we can hold space for each other to be our best selves, even if that means that we have different beliefs, you really can move the needle, and man, your organization can go so far. And so I wanted to tell that story, and I'm cutting it short, not doing it much justice because of the time, but it's conversations like that though that give me hope. It's the one-on-ones. I love one-on-ones, to really just say, let's talk about what is your discomfort with it? Why is it hard? And so when we can leave the room understanding and agreeing that you don't have to agree with each other, and that, you know, what really, really matters is that we are respecting one another, loving one another, and creating psychologically safe environments, you have a better understanding and a different respect for D&I, because you know that this is about equity. Again, back to that word, and this isn't about changing. It's not about changing who you are. And a lot of people think that that's what it is. You have to lose a sense of self for this work to move along. But the truth is, the more grounded you are in yourself, the better you are on this journey. And so my faith is honestly what keeps me going. I really do feel that we can turn the needle if more people come together rather than continue to separate and have this polarized view, which is what we're living in right now.
Right. Finding the common ground. Thank you. Cinthya, what gives you hope?
Thank you. Well, you know, I guess we'll just kind of bring it close to home. And it's the fact that, you know, I'm seeing change happen. I'm seeing people really look to have a better place for their families and communities where we can respect each other and look for growth. Here we have this call where you have a great deal of people, you know, logging in, engagement. There's interest. And so that gives me hope, right? We've got, as we started the call, our leaders at our respective cities that are supportive of this work. That gives me hope. And so being able to carry the message and actions behind, you know, our purpose to create a better place is what gives me hope. And so, as I said during our discussion, I have seen it work. I have led the work. And so I want nothing more than to my own city be prosperous in that way, for us to drive innovation and for us to drive inclusion so that people can feel that they belong.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. I appreciate your authenticity. I appreciate your generosity of time. I know it must be extremely hectic just having started, but many thanks to the Dialogue Institute for bringing this program. You're like a one-man team, Muhammad. With that, we'll applaud our presenters and thank them. So this is how I understand you're supposed to applaud when you're on mute. So thank you both. It was such a pleasure to work with you on this. Muhammad, you want to take it from here and remind everybody of the donation and the great work that you're doing in this incredible program. I'm so excited about March. This is on resiliency. This man, after 9/11, he was targeted because he was Muslim, shot in the face by a white supremacist. And he's going to talk about his journey for reconciliation and resiliency. It's an incredible story. From that incident, he has started a worldwide movement. So, Mohammed, okay, it's yours. I'm going to quit talking.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Cinthya and Shalynne, for this powerful and inspiring talk. I'm filled with energy. So I am open to all lunch invitations, since we talk about having lunch together. If you have time available, I can put my contact information. Just feel free to invite. I believe education is the key, and having time together and just having conversation, either formal or informal conversation, is so important to get to know one another, because we know that once you create friendship, and when you have all these conversation, I believe it will be easier for us to see the humanity in each other. So I have a quick video that I like to show for the March 25th program. Then I will pass over to a friend, a special guest from Pakistan. And I heard we have not just Oklahomans, people from Sri Lanka, from Pakistan, all around the world. They watch this conversation and enjoy. Started seeing all these wonderful comments. Just let me play this quick video, and then I will
live in America. And in recent days, we've been hearing about a disturbing rise in hate crimes against them. That's why a new documentary series, The Secret Life of Muslims, caught our attention. The series can be seen online at Vox and the USA Today network. We asked award-winning filmmaker Joshua Seftel, an occasional contributor to Sunday Morning, to tell us more about it.
When I was a skinny 11-year-old living in a small town, kids threw pennies at me because I was Jewish. And I'll never forget how that made me feel. It got me thinking about what it must be like to be Muslim in America right now. So I asked some people of that faith to tell me their stories. Here's one of them.
Mark Stroman was on a shooting rampage to kill as many Muslims as possible. As a retaliation of 9/11 terrorist attacks, he killed Waqar Hassan, a man from Pakistan. He shot and killed a man from India, Vasudeb Patel. And on September 21st, 2001, he shot me in the face. As a child, my impression about USA was, it's a great country, beautiful country. I remember watching a lot of Western movies for a few dollars more. The good, bad, and the ugly. It was a dream that one day I should visit the wild, wild West and see all those things. After graduating from a military school in Bangladesh, I went to Dallas and loved it. Worked pretty hard, and within like a month, I was working as a clerk in a gas station. It gave me an opportunity to get to know the people, to learn the culture. I moved to Dallas May 2001, 3 months before the 9/11 terrorist attacks. 10 days after 9/11, I was behind the counter. A customer walked in. He was holding a double-barrel shotgun, pointing at my face. I said, "Sir, here is all the money. Please do not shoot me." And then he mumbled a question, "Where are you from?" I was confused, and I said, "Excuse me?" As soon as I said, "Excuse me," he pulled the trigger. I felt it first like a million bees stinging my face, and then I heard the explosion. Frantically, I placed both palms on my head, thinking I had to keep my brain from spilling out. I felt that my time was up. Images of my mother, my father, my siblings, and my fiancé appeared one after another one. And I was begging God, do not take me today.
10 days after 9/11, Stroman went on a shooting spree.
Mark Stroman, a white supremacist, wanted revenge and shot 3 clerks who he thought were Muslims.
Here in America, everybody was saying, let's get them.
2 of his victims died. Stroman was convicted of murder and sentenced to death.
I went to Hajj in 2009 with my mother. During the pilgrimage, she was rubbing on my face. She was crying, and I heard my mom telling God that whatever my son wants to do with this life, help him. In my faith, in Islam, it says that saving a life is like saving the entire mankind. Mark Stroman has committed a heinous crime, there's no doubt about that. But all the good things I was taught inspired me, go and do the right thing.
Mark Stroman has been in this prison behind me for nearly 10 years.
As he sits on death row, an unlikely champion is fighting to save his life.
Boyan will be partially blind for the rest of his life because of his injuries. But he wasn't interested in eye for an eye justice.
I went to the U.S. Supreme Court asking for clemency for Mark Stroman, went to the U.S. Federal Court, went to the U.S. State Court of Texas.
For this man to forgive me, which I've done the unforgivable, for him to come forward the way he did, it speaks volume. It speaks volume for the human race.
He wrote a long letter to me. He said that my stepfather taught me some lessons that I should have never learned. I have unlearned some of them, and I'm still unlearning some of them. I don't know who your parents were, but it is obvious they are wonderful people to lead you to act this way, to forgive someone who is unforgivable. On the day he was executed, he put my name on a list of people that he would like to talk. As soon as he came on the phone, I said, Mark, you should know that I never hated you. I forgave you. And he said, Reyes, I love you, bro. It's the same person. 10 years back, his heart was filled with hate and ignorance. But when he came to know me, he saw me as a human being. He was able to tell me that he loved me, and he called me brother. Today, I am the founder and president of a nonprofit called World Without Hate, educating people about the transformational power of mercy and forgiveness, based on a hope that we can build a better world, a world without violence, a world without victims, and a world without hate.
All right, so the Rise will be our speaker for the March 25th event, and he is going to share his story. It will be moderated by the former mayor of Tulsa, Roger Randall. So you are all invited. Please visit our website to get more information. So now I will just turn it over to Haziq Ali. Haziq is a student at UCO. He's studying strategic communication, and he's also interning at Dialogue Institute. But because of the online education, he went to Pakistan, living with his family, but still doing the good work to just spread peace and understanding. So Haziq, mic is yours.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm so happy to be joining you guys from Islamabad, Pakistan. It's the capital of Pakistan, and the local time over here right now, I'd say it's bedtime, but I'm still happy to be joining. And I'm an intern at the Dialogue Institute for past 3 years, alongside with being a student at University of Central Oklahoma. The reason I am an intern over here is, number one, I really believe in the cause that the Dialogue Institute is working for. And second, I think that Mohammed's wife and everybody at the Dialogue Institute cooks really good food. So that's another added benefit of being in there. These were some really great conversations that we heard today. Thank you, Shalynne. Thank you, Cinthya. Thank you, Shannon, and everybody who gave their time to us today. Lots of familiar faces in this Zoom meeting today. I'd say it feels like I'm almost back in Edmond, but it's just not as cold, So, but it was a great conversation, and to be honest, our age group, especially the people in college, this particular age group, which I'm sure all of you were a part of, which was, I guess, 4 years ago, something like that. Yeah. So we are very enthusiastic about talking about diversity. It's one of the topics that is at the forefront of every conversation. Every conversation in college is centered around this word diversity. And so for a student who is just about to step into their professional life, I think seeing conversations like this in the community that I am in I am just proud of being in there, and I'm not just speaking it for myself, but for all the people around in that community. And we talked about today what gives us what gives us hope. So a famous quote from The Alchemist is, it's the prospect of having a dream come true that makes life interesting. So my dream is that once we step out of college, once we graduate, we continue to have these conversations around diversity and inclusion with our pals. And this is my hope, and this is exactly what keeps us moving. And Rumi, a famous quote by Rumi is that it is the opposites, split opposites, what define each other. And in that case, the dark is defined by lightness. It's the cure is in the opposite. And hatred is cured by love. So how do you cure a future that wants to move into the direction of a diverse and inclusive environment? And that is to work on the generation that is moving forward into the future today. So I'm proud to be at the forefront of an organization that is working at this. And my hope for next year is, I hope all of us, we're here on Zoom today, but I hope all of us get together again at the Dialogue Institute, see each other face to face, and enjoy all those kebabs together. So I really look forward to that. One of the questions that was interesting over here was, these are difficult conversations, and where do you start? So just to conclude my remarks, I'd say there's no better way to start these conversations. I know these are difficult, but there's no better way to start these conversations than just coming together, kicking it off with Turkish coffee and some kebabs. So I look forward to seeing all of you next year. I hope we can all get together like this in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazik, so very much. I think the future is bright. Since Hazik is just talking from future, we're so hopeful. And we're so glad to have all of you with us today. Thank you, guys, and looking forward to having you with us next time on March 25th. Please mark your calendars and make a donation as much as possible to help our neighbors in Texas. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Thank you, Shay.
Thank you, Cinthya. Thank you, Shalynne.
Yes, thank you so much.
Good to see you, Miguel. Bye-bye.
Have a good week, y'all. Bye.
You as well. Bye, guys.